probably be our best bet. Okay. And if people want to read for open mic, remember to send me a message via chat. And if you do not want to be recorded for whatever reasons, just send me a message and I will be mindful of that, and I will be checking the chat section. Okay, I got you, Jojo. And so now I would like to introduce Kelly Grace Thomas. She has a lot of different awards that she's won, and we'll start with, you know, this, I love this one, the 2017 Neil Postman Award for the Metaphor from Rattle. I love Rattle. 2018 finalist for Rita Dove Poetry Award and multiple Pushcart Prize nominees. This is her first full length, and it's called Boat Burned, and the cover is amazing. I'm trying to see if I can get that up. It's from Yes Yes Books. Thank you, that helps. Yeah, no, that is just, now, how did you pick that cover? I'm just gonna cut to that question because that is just remarkable.
Yeah, so there's a really amazing Lebanese photographer. Her name is Laura Zancoul, and I can put her information in the chat. And I was looking through, I knew kind of the feeling that I wanted. I wanted women, I wanted water. There's so much that, you know, the reoccurring images in the book. So I started Googling images, and I found this collection of, it's called The Unsaid, that this photo comes from, and I was just so taken. And there's actually a YouTube video where you can see how she created this shot. It is just incredible. It's The Unsaid or The Unseen. I can't remember the name of her collection where the photo comes from. So yeah, we wanted to take it, to have it for the cover. And we had such a hard time getting in touch with her because she was like traveling in all these different countries. And I remember my publisher, KMA, was like, okay, we got to go back to square one. And I was like, no. And then like the next day we heard from her. So it was just wonderful.
So you had found it and you knew that's what you wanted. That, I'm so happy it worked out because it's amazing. And if you haven't seen any of the reviews of Kelly's book, they've been rolling in some amazing reviews that I've been so happy to see. For you. Yeah. So I'm not going to take up any more time. We're going to go straight to the fun part. Kelly, it is all yours. And people, if y'all don't mind muting so that we can focus on her reading, that'd be great.
Sure. Thanks. Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for having me. I'm really excited to be here in the space among poets and friends and, you know, a new community and writers. So yeah, the title of the book is Boat Burned. It's from Yes Yes Books, and I'm gonna go ahead and read a poem that someone sets up the collection, and this is called The Boat of My Body. He tugged at my skirt, said, vessel. He hoisted me down, yelled, voyage. Yes, I am boat. Was born half forced, still think about the axe. I want to smell like mahogany again. I want all these hands out of my cabin, not to mention the oars forced down the mouths of rivers. Noah was the first. He said, here is everything left of this world. Carry it for me. Your belly speaks, a soft, wet float. So the title poem kind of started that I had this collection, and it had a lot of different things that were going on. And I was in a Korean day spa in Los Angeles, and there the women all go and, you know, naked into different rooms with a robe on. And I was taking my clothes off, and I thought, what if I was something underneath my clothes that was not human? And I was just like, I would be a boat. And I have a lot of history with boats. I'll talk more, I'm sure, in the Q&A about my past with boats and how they tie into the collection and how they tie into my family. So the second poem is called How the Body is Passed Down. My mother unzips the body, passes it down, the dress tailored too tight, leaves red indentations of buttons pressed hard as apology. My mother was still hungry, royal with fridge glow, learned that loneliness eats with its hands. My body has always been a window I cannot throw myself from. Breasts, stomach, thighs dimpled and swollen, wetted wood in a house I was born into but did not build. I see my mother's hips every time I open the fridge. every time the fridge opens me. My cabinets stocked with shame, what a mother feeds her young. Now I know a body can haunt itself, be a fear no one else believes in, a ghost that only says my name. Thank you, thank you. Oh man, isn't life so funny on Zoom? But I can see you all and your lovely faces. Thanks so much. So a lot of the book really has to deal with my relationship to my body. I just had an interview come out with John Sibley Williams, yeah, great poet, great person. And I talked about how this book really started because I did not like who I was. Like, I just didn't like the woman I was. There was so much self-hate. And I came to this collection with the question of why. It has a lot to do with, you know, my relationship to my parents, what they have taught me. They're wonderful people. My relationship to, you know, past partners and, you know, what I learned from my experience with them. And a lot of the poems talk about another guy, but they also talk about my husband, Omid, who's Persian. So this poem is called, I Suggest Omid Shave His Beard. And I hate myself for it. But it could be the difference between whether he comes home or not. Half this country sees beard and thinks bomb. Thinks Muslim means murder, and that half looks just like me. Omid's beard grows fast with my worry. I fear the other half will never consider the softness of his smile, that Persians are poets, that the sun rises in the east. At night, I run my fingers through his beard, the razor of the nightly news pressed, and I can't keep either one of us safe. The day after the election, he tells me terror is being caught in the crosshairs of the white man's gaze. Half this country has eyes like a loaded gun. After I ask, he turns to me and says, yes, I am scared. But I will never shave parts of myself away so more of this can grow. Oh, thank you. So one of the, one of the inspirations for the book, there's a very famous quote by Sun Tzu, who wrote The Art of War, and he said, when you cross into enemy territory, you burn the bridges and you burn the boats to show that you're not going back, that it's either like forward progress or that's it. And I thought a lot about that quote and what it means to burn the boats, right? What a commitment means, that I'm not going back to whatever that was. So hence the title Boat Burn. So this is the title-ish poem. It's called Burn the Boats. Because I believed somehow it was my fault. I never told anyone how great-grandmother pinched the extra chub around my waist and asked, who will keep you now? Pointed to every empty man not at our table. Told me I'm only as good as what I can please. Hunger, my only harbor, I carry this. A body full of broken boards and boundaries. I never told anyone how my first love dropped threats like an anchor. Warned me what would happen if I took on water, sinking. Always slipped between his speech. I believed being boarded equaled boat, so I floated for 7 years, subtracting what I had for another body, parts of me that couldn't fit inside his hands. My first love never let me use the front door. Instead, gave me a dark porthole to climb through. I only remember this. In bed, He would measure the circumference of my thighs and then beg for less. I became the smallest vessel I could steer. Every day he climbed through my story until I gathered enough distance to choose another name. I can't turn back. I strike a single match, burn myself brighter. The boats that built me smoke on shore. I'm just checking the time here. All right. I have 2 more poems for you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening. So this section starts with an epigraph from the poet Ocean Vuong, and it says, here's today, I promise it's not a lifeboat. So this poem is called Lifeboat. Don't worry. Your mother will always live inside the house you built for her. A sailboat can only wait so long for wind. When you run aground, the buoys nod a quiet, I know. Omid loves you. Anchor the children close. At sunrise, you write about the morning your sister almost died. Then your mother. The many ways the sea tries to take, they say, tell me a story, and you never know the right way to spill. This is the one where you and your father tied yourselves to dark, sailed all night to make it to Florida, holding only a memory of sleep. This was the biggest goodbye. Your legs still rock. Now in the morning, you look at the clouds you named together, how each of you chose your shape. And then I have one last poem. This poem is about my husband, Omid, again. He inspires me a lot. And something that you need to know for the poem is that I used to live in Los Angeles, which is, quite diverse, and moved to Walnut Creek about 2 years ago, year and a half ago, which is not as diverse as Los Angeles. And this is called Small Things. The webs of Walnut Creek are all spun white. In our new town, I notice each grocery store glare, sticky stares follow Omid down each aisle. Still, my love keeps quiet hands, wears kindness like salt and pepper stubble. I study him as he hums to houseplants. It's been hard for me to learn a love so gentle, to believe him when he chants me close, hushes, gorgeous, until I fall asleep. In the morning, he scrambles eggs, spatula in hand. He spots the lonely daddy longlegs in a quiet corner, the wall weaver nestled next to light. He says, needing a home is such a small thing to be forgiven for. He lets the delicate geometry stay. I am slow to learn how to handle a living thing. I study Omid as he smiles at spiders. I ask him how. His speech, soft as saffron, breath, a net I lean against. He tells me he's been called a terrorist more times than he can count. His answer, save something smaller. Call each a guest. Leave all doors open. Just because the world has called something poison, he says, doesn't mean we kill it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Malika, for having me.
I don't want it to end. I want you to keep reading.
May I speak real fast?
Of course.
Sure.
Okay. First of all, we're already friends on Facebook. May I message you?
Yes, of course.
Okay, because I love talking, and you, like, your poetry, oh my God, like, oh, I'm probably gonna have to go steal your book. I'm poor. I'm gonna have to go somewhere and just steal it and whatever. But like, oh my God, you're so amazing. Your poems are beautiful. Your husband is like a halo. He sounds amazing.
Actually,
Like, your poems are so much, like, I like started crying. Like your one about, well, your whole story about your body, which I was gonna read one poem and then I changed my mind and I'm gonna read another one for open. But like, and then your poems about your husband are amazing. But the one about the first lover and measuring your thighs and that whole day, oh my God, that was so like, oh, it hit me so hard, and and I'm so glad you got out of that bullshit. Sorry, I
Me
cussed.
too.
That was, oh, he needed to be run over with a car.
He sure did.
you know, Jojo, you said
amazing.
something that I wanted to dovetail with, because Karen wrote, let me see if I can find, Karen wrote, I think I'm in love with Kelly's husband.
Yeah, he seems like
Those were gorgeous love poems, though. They were
like,
gorgeous. And I did want to read some of the comments because John also said a couple of the things that other people said.
And I just want to say sorry I spoke so fast, but I couldn't hold my tongue no more. Like, waiting, like, I loved your poems, but also having to wait until you were done was killing me because I just wanted to like just ooze you with compliments and yeah, I can't wait until we talk because I love talking and I have no life. And so I'm always available to talk. And yeah, we're going to talk lots because you're brilliant and amazing. And unfortunately, Facebook, like, shoves some people away, you know, like how the feed and some people get lost. Yeah. So I'm so glad you read so I could be like, no, and then find you. And then you gave you permission to talk to me. And I know I'm talking too much, but I'm so excited. You're brilliant. You're amazing. Like, I love poets. And yeah, you're... Oh my God.
Well, and John, you're not alone because that's what everybody else was writing.
And you can ask Christy, Karen, and Laura. I talk their ears off, or I try to, you know.
Laura's fantastic. So some of the lines that people, and actually Loneliness Eats with Its Hands got, you know, quite a few people responding deeply to that.
Yeah.
And so if y'all have questions, jump in. John knows to do that too. Actually, 3 people wrote Loneliness Eats with the Hands. Its hands. Wow, that resonated deeply with Karen, Christy, and Laura. It's always amazing when the exact same line, but you have some lines that just really stick with you.
Yeah.
My body has always been a window. I don't throw myself out. I mean, that one just, and then Christy finally wrote, I need this book. And then Karen wrote, yes, I also must have this book.
Yeah, I must have this book also.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, it's so lovely to hear. It's you know, it's a weird time. So it's nice to be reminded of your art. You know, I think it's nice to have those opportunities.
And how important it is to others, like that your work, you know, sometimes you don't get to see how the impact is, but you know, you have multiple people writing about how this line just resonates and how deeply they felt connected to what you read and how they have to have this book. And when someone says that, I mean, really think about what that means.
Yeah.
You know, you're saying something that is so valuable and so resonant to other people that they want to go out and have it, you know, be able to come back to those poems.
Well, so, you know, I think I think that the point of poetry is to keep company, you know, and to make you feel like you're not alone in the world, because so often we feel that we're alone. So I say, like, if I even wrote not even one poem, one line that makes someone feel seen or heard or understood, or like I can keep them company, the poem can keep them company, that's like worth it for me.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of is your way of being in the world anyway, with what you do with Get Lit, giving people an ability to, you know, speak their truth, but also hear other people's truths, and like you said, not feel alone, to feel seen or heard, and how valuable, how life-changing that experience is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so important that we, I have like the notion that so much of like the ugliness that we see in the world comes from a lack of self-love. You know, I think that people hurt other people because they're scared, because they don't know how to love themselves. So I think that if we can work to do that, and poetry is a really good way to just dig in and be like, why do I think these things? Or who am I? Or how can I be someone different? Like, I feel like I use writing to write me out of a hole. And I know that it has saved me so many times where I wasn't sure what to do or where to go or who I was. So I'm really passionate about helping others, especially youth, because I started as a high school teacher and I'm an educator, like through and through to my heart. Do that. I also have a podcast that I do with Trisha Faye Hefner, who's another amazing poet, where we talk all about like revision strategies with other poets, which is also a lot of fun.
Where is the podcast? What is the title?
It's called the Poetry Salon Cast, and I can put a link in the chat right now.
Would you? That would be fantastic. I have not heard this. That would be wonderful.
Absolutely.
Yep, so now we're all in love with you. That's you talk.
Yeah, like your story about like learning to love your body and stuff. That's what I went through a lot, was even like before and now, and it took me a long time. And is it okay if I talk? Like, y'all don't mind?
A little late to ask, Joe.
What?
You already are talking.
Oh, I meant if you want me to shut up, I will. But no, the story resonated with me because I used to be super skinny because I was terrified to get fat. And so I hated my body because I always thought I was fat. And now I got better, and now I'm a bit bigger. And then I started hating my body all over because I thought I was fat. And so it took a really, really long time to learn, you know, you're beautiful no matter what, you know, like it matters more on the inside and your personality and stuff. And so like when you were talking about all that, it really resonated, and it made me think of all of myself and stuff. Then you start reading your poems, and I was like, oh my God, like it's just the connection of learning and being, and the trauma, and even the past boyfriend, because I've had horrible exes who all that. And so it's just like, wow, you know, like you said, you know, not to be alone, to understand other people have grew and come out on the wonderful side. And now you have the, you know, a perfect husband who loves you, and worship is your you know, your the floor you walk on. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, you know, everybody deserves that. And it's wonderful you finally found that and everything.
Thank you.
I'm just so enamored by you, like I am. And when I get super excited, I talk too much. I can't shut up.
Well, John, I think that's enthusiasm, and that's a good thing. But I wanted to go back to what Kelly said about like that initial impulse and how poetry has served to write you out of those holes. You said your first question with this book, or how, you know, one of the things that informed like the writing was, you know, how did I come to these feelings? And I wanted you to talk about boats, because you said you were going to come back to and that metaphor is perfect for this book.
Yeah.
And for the body. Oh, that was just amazing. But you said there was a personal tie-in, so I wanted to hear about that.
Yeah, so when I was younger, I have a very complicated relationship, like family relationship that's beautiful, but my mom and dad were separated, but they were still best friends, and my dad had like moved on and was dating someone else when I was very young, but my mom still wanted him in, you know, our lives. So he would come over for dinner, even though they were separated and he was with someone else, every Tuesday, Thursday, and then all day Sunday we'd spend together. And on Sundays we would always go sailing because my dad had a boat. And then he went through a bankruptcy and lost everything, you know, was evicted, all that, houses were foreclosed on. And he decided that he was going to relocate. And the only thing he had left was a boat, a 34-foot Sabre. So we, to say goodbye as a family, sailed from New Jersey to Florida with him to say goodbye. We left him in Florida with the boat, and we flew back to New Jersey, my mom, my sister, and I. So when I think about boats, I think about my family. I think about positivity, but also there's this heartbreak because it was a countdown to losing my dad. He's still very much in my life, but at that moment when you're 10 years old, I think about how incredibly gendered they have been throughout history, that boats were always looked at as she, but women were never allowed on them. You can look up such disgusting quotes where men, compare women to boats because they need paint and upkeep and they're out of control without a man at the helm. I mean, there's just such wild language around boats. But for me, I've always felt really like the truest version of myself on the water. I grew up on the water. I used to race sailboats competitively. It was a very, when you race sailboats, it's like playing chess with the earth and with yourself. So it was extremely reflective and cerebral. So they've been a huge part of just my upbringing in general. And also the quiet and the solace. If you've never been on a sailboat, they move so slow. I mean, it is like a practice in being Zen. To sit on a sailboat I had no television. I had books and I had my family, and that was about it. So I would spend hours just staring at the ocean, listening to music, thinking about words.
Wow. Oh, I love that. I love that. Karen, you said, go.
I just have to say, I'm so happy that there is a mute button on Zoom, because when you were reading and when you're talking, I am making so much noise. I'm just like, I'm like, I'm exclaiming. I know my husband is in the other room thinking, oh my God, what's going on in there? You are just wonderful. And that's so my gauge for like a deep art experience is, if I'm making sounds, it's like, that's the best thing. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
Karen is the living embodiment of the Stendhal effect when you go to see art. So if she's reacting, it's something really profound and moving. So
awesome. I don't think I know what the Stendhal effect is.
Oh, it's when you cry when you're looking at a painting, or you have a really huge visceral emotional reaction. Yeah. I don't know. It came from something. Well, obviously Stendhal, but I can't remember the exact context now. I just had to look it up because Karen kept crying when we go to museums.
I'm a free cry. Yeah, I do. I cry. I cry when I'm happy. I cry when people read their poetry, when it just touches me. Your work is beautiful, and what you're saying about it is amazing.
Thank you.
I did want to ask you a question, though.
Sure.
I can hardly wait to get my hands on your book. Can you talk about like how the book came? Like, did you have this vision for, I'm going to throw down on some boat imagery, or were the poems just coming and you're like, I got my top, how did this actually come together?
There's this book by Twyla Thorpe that I have not read, the famous dancer, that I have not read, but it's sitting on my bookshelf that my friend told me about, and she talks about how any great piece of art needs like a backbone to it, that it needs like something to give it a structure and a spine. And I don't think that I had that with the boat imagery until I had that moment in the spa. I mean, when I had that moment in the spa, I sat down like in my little pink robe and wrote that poem and like submitted it like the next day. I feel like I was a little more fearless than I am now. So I like submitted it, it got picked up, and I was like, this is a really interesting thing to explore because it was so rich for me. The collection overall took about 3 years to get picked up, but I don't think that it was ready until it got picked up. So I don't think I knew that boat imagery until I submitted it for Yes Books, which I'm a huge fan of, my wonderful publishers. They have something called the Pamet River Prize, and it was for women and non-binary writers, the first or second book. And I saw their authors read at AWP when it was in Los Angeles, and I was so in love with this press that I went and I bought every single book they had. I think it was like 12 books. It wasn't a lot. I mean, it was 12 or 15. It's not like I bought 100 books, but I bought all 12 books because I was so determined, because I love them so much. And I was just like, I'm so interested in the voices that you're publishing. And I just was so in love with all of the work that they were choosing. So I read every book, and I was like thinking about how can I get them to want me? So I was a semifinalist for the Pamet River Prize. And I found out in, I want to say I found out in like, I think I found out in May. And you had to have you submitted 10 poems and you had to have a full manuscript finalized, like ready to go in 2 months. And I spent, every day, I had a manuscript, but it was not where I wanted it to be. And I very much believe in don't stop until you're proud. So every day, every morning, every night I was writing. I mean, I was writing up until like, midnight that night when I handed it in 7 a.m. the next morning. So it had a lot of titles. It looked really different. And it wasn't until I found like the backbone of the boat that I felt like I knew what the manuscript really was. And I didn't even really know it was done. I'm a very superstitious person in terms of energy and numbers. And 77 is like my favorite number. Whenever I see it, I feel like it's an omen that good things are coming. And I was taking out poems and putting them in. And I was like, I don't know. And then, I scrolled to the end of the last page, and the last poem ended on page 77. And I was like, I'm done. Like, I'm done. I'm walking away. And then I submitted it. So
that's cool.
Yeah, it's wild.
That's the universe. Yeah.
And I'm a big believer in signs from the universe. And like, if nothing else, I mean, they make me feel good. If people are like, do you really believe in that? It's like, who cares?
Who cares?
If it makes me happier, like, who cares?
Maker. Yeah, that's
yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I do believe in it, but you don't have to. But it makes my life better. So
there you go.
Yeah, I count on those synchronicities or those things to be the little reminder. It's like the web just shivering, so you know that you're lined up correctly.
Yeah, I think of it like the universe giving me like a thumbs up, like, yeah, you're going in the right direction. I'm like, okay, cool, just gonna keep on walking. Yeah.
That's awesome. Did anybody else have any questions? I didn't see any in the chat section, so I want to make sure that I didn't miss anything. If you wanted to ask Kelly a question.
I've got another one because I didn't, I had a crazy day. That's why I'm drinking champagne, because I'm happy this day.
I love it.
Was, I didn't get to read all your credentials because I started, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is going to be so good. And then I went and got champagne instead of reading everything. I don't know what Get Lit is. Can you talk about that? It sounds interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a poetry nonprofit. Where we work in communities, mainly communities of underserved youth throughout California, and now expanding across the nation. So what they do is, in our curriculum, we have students, we pick 100 to 150 poems that are like classics that we think are like the best poems of that year. And that can be anyone from like Emily Dickinson to Jericho Brown to Tupac. So it really runs the gamut of all like redefining what poetry really is. And in that program, they claim a poem, they memorize it, they perform it, and then they write their own spoken word response. So the duo starts as, a conversation that was started in the past, and then it's brought into the present as a dialogue between the classic poet and the student. So it's really amazing.
That's really cool.
That's awesome. And I'm the director of education. I used to be a high school teacher, and I started doing the program, teaching the curriculum, and I just got like my students, it changed I watched it just change lives in front of me in the best way. And I did it for about 5 years, and there's a competition every year, and my students did very well, and my team did really well. So they offered me a job, and I've worked there since 2016, I believe.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's
amazing.
Yeah, it's been really great. I mean, I got to write a textbook for them, and I get to, work on the programming and bring in poets that I really admire, which is so exciting.
That's exciting.
So it's been really lovely.
Yeah, I thought you would like that, Karen.
Oh yeah,
it's
I'm
great
all over
to do. So it's kind of like poetry out loud, but the added addition of teaching how to write a response, which I really like that detail, because that just brings the experience so deep into
I think
life.
so few in literature we ask, like, it's like, what was the author's intention? What did the author mean? But I mean, I feel like the question of how does this relate to your life? How does this relate to your world? What does this mean to you? And your
meaningful,
whatever's happening. Yeah. I don't think we ask that question enough. It's always someone else's story. It's never their story. So the nice thing is it's a jumping off point, because sometimes you ask a kid to tell you your story and they're like, they're a little, little terrified where to begin. So it's very lovely that that they have the framework and the conversation started, and then they can dive into it.
That's another website that we can look up and see how.
Oh yeah, I'll put the link right here.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. That'd be nice to, and I'll try to include that in the YouTube video too, so people have access to maybe supporting that nonprofit. It's not an easy time to be a nonprofit.
No, definitely not. Yeah, and it's pretty simple. It's just getlit.org. But they have, I mean, they have a YouTube. They have a YouTube that's amazing with all different like poetry, education videos, and poems. It's really incredible.
Thank you. That's awesome. Yeah. And Christy, you've been quiet.
I know, a little quiet.
That's interesting because normally you're more talkative. I could tell she really touched you with the work. Is that what's got you just thinking?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you have any questions, feel free. If not, that's okay too. Sometimes we just gotta listen, right?
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, I actually got physical chills with one of the poems that you were reading, and I probably put a line down when it happened, but I don't think I've had that happen in a really long time.
Oh, that's
and I was like, good heavens. It was just,
the body has always been a window. Okay.
It's the images, how you go about with certain images. Yeah, it was My Body Has Always Been a Window.
Yeah.
That poem. I think that was the one about your mom and the, yeah.
Yeah, I think that so much of how we feel about our body is modeled from our parents, you know, and I think that I always say, you know, I've talked about this in several interviews, that I don't know why I learned Algebra 2. I never use it. You know, I know why I learned statistics and probability. That's fine. But why we don't have a class on how to love ourselves, on how to express emotion, you know, if you know, and I think about the ways that I don't or didn't. I think I'm much better now, didn't love myself, that I had inherited from my mother or father because no one taught them how to love themselves. It's like this trickle down effect. And I think that I've always been in a family where women apologize for their bodies. And I find that so incredibly upsetting. And I spent the first, 37 years of my life apologizing for my body. And I can't say that I don't still do it now, but not as often as, I did. But I started thinking about like this deep shame and where does that shame come from? And there's so many ways that we can, sadly, there's so many things we can point. It's like, oh, it comes from here and here and here. Like we're surrounded by all of these examples that we learn. But I think that the book was an act of unlearning it. But to unlearn it, you need to figure out where the root is and really kind of start thinking, what planted it in the first place. So I think the poem is really an exploration of part of the roots.
That's an interesting approach because you're approaching poetry or the art of making poetry as a quest, like as an exploration of questions. And I think a lot of times people think you have to have answers in order to write. And I love that you approach it with kind of this open dialogue between you and the poem.
Yeah, I think it's really like a inquiry. There's a poem in there that is called Femininity, How to Solve for X, Femininity as a Word Problem. And it's talking about all the language, but then there's, a point where someone says, walk the junior from UCLA to her car and tell her, use words like better now and tell her you have the answers. But the implication is like, there are like not even close to the answers. So I remember like writing this poem, this book and saying to someone, well, what I'm trying to do is, and they're like, oh yeah, do you love yourself more now? And I'm like, no. It took a long time. The book had to be like out in the world and it took a lot of work besides poems. Like, I don't think that poems are therapy, but I think that they can help the therapeutic process. And I think that they're absolutely 100% an inquiry to self and an inquiry to the world. I have always come to writing because there's something that I don't feel like I fully understand, but I feel, I could really feel it. And not that a poem gives me understanding, but it gives me a place to converse with it, just like you said, a dialogue.
Well, and also that kind of dovetails with what you were saying about the world and some of the nastiness and ugliness that we see being really part of a lack of self-love, you know, that self-care and self-love is a political act, particularly, I think, for women, but that is where a lot of people suffer and inflict suffering. Hurt people, as we used to say.
Yeah, they do. They do, and I think it's so important. I think we're seeing so many different examples. I mean, you could go on about race or gun violence or whatever it can be, you know, of the ways that we are really hurting as like a global people. And that needs to be addressed, because how are we going to move forward?
Very good question.
Just a small task. just a small thing, but I mean, at the same time, I think there's ways that we're learning every day how to love ourselves and celebrate ourselves that we didn't have when I was younger, and that is really something to be applauded as well.
And you working with, you know, younger people, I know that with my daughters, I watch them navigate things that I just didn't look at in the same way. It does give me a lot of hope for the future, because these kids are, you know, definitely more aware of issues than I was, and way more accepting of each other, and more vocal about their experience than I would have been at their age.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
And pro-justice. I mean, they, you know, they feel very strongly about protecting the people that they love and protecting people who are vulnerable, and speaking out when they see something that's not right. So it's something I enjoy watching, and I'm sure you get to hear a benefit of a lot of people, you know, a lot of your students reading poems that you just go, that's incredible that this youth has this voice and this insight and this passion to build a better community for all of us.
I always say the future's in good hands, you know, like I doing the work I do, I'm like, 100%, like this world will probably be better, you know, when they're older than it might have been the year before or the generation before or whatever. You know, each generation brings different knowledge, but I think that the youth that we're looking at now are really like disruptors in terms of like, this is the way you used to always do it, but that's probably not the best way.
No, I agree. And that makes me happy to hear you say that, because I hear a lot of people talk poorly about, you know, the younger generations. And I just don't see that. I watch my daughters and I go, this is awesome.
Yeah. Agreed.
Well, does anybody have any other questions? You all want to move to open mic? I have just John written down, and Karen, we have a special request for your.
Oh yeah, we'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear all of your work. If that, you know, whoever feels comfortable reading, I look forward to hearing it.
Awesome. Thank you so very much, Kelly. I know we all want to clap again too.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and this has just been wonderful so far.
I kind of feel selfish that we got to have you with a small group, but I'm happy about it because I've really enjoyed it.
I know.
Yeah, I was very upset, like, it's a small group, and then as we went, I'm like, oh, thank God, now we can talk more and goof off and praise you, and we have more time to, you know, chat.
Aw, thank you.
Thank you. All right, John, do you want to go ahead and read? Are you okay with it being recorded?
Oh, yes. All right, so I was going to read something, but then her poem spoke to me, so I changed. So this is my Learning to Love My New Body poem, and it's called Learning to Love My New Body. My body, a wet temple. Exploration goes almost mute. Decades pass before someone realizes beauty in thick form is beauty, is real, is natural, is not bone but coral, is not the puddle drying daily in the sun but ocean, hungry and fierce and organic. My body has a multitude of hieroglyphics scratched across its walls, not stretch marks. Rub along the soft hairs and feel the curves turn your fingers. Press against my lips and become tender. And that's that poem.
Wow, what a thing.
John. That was lovely. Yeah, and I can see why her work inspired you to pick that one.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Do you have your poem, Karen? Did you find it?
I did find it. I have to say, John, you always tickle me how you read a poem and you're like, well, there's that one. I just love it. So John did a great book launch. I don't even know when it was, but it was on a Thursday night thing. And his collection is awesome. If anybody in attendance doesn't know, it's amazing. Like I can read like 3 poems and then I have to throw the book down and leave the room. I'm just like,
thank you.
But I love how you do that, especially with your short poems. You're just like, you just read this awesome poem and then you're like, well, that was that one. And then you just go on to another one. Awesome. All right. Okay. So this is my poem by request. I was going to read my Grackles poem tonight, but this is,
I love that poem.
It's the universe. So, okay. So groupie regrouping. Watching Billy Collins perform, tears squirt from the sides of my eyes. Rapturous moans escape my throat, and I am overwhelmed. In an instant of upswelled adoration, I think to unloose the binds that confine, set free the me, but I reconsider. Probably not a fitting tribute to the poet or his poems, the hurling onto the stage at his feet of my sweaty, wet, and slightly tattered utilitarian support bra.
I love it. Oh, that's so fun.
That's great.
Wonderful.
That's where my head was during my live performance, watching Billy Collins perform. That's where I was. I went with a good friend of mine. We call each other our art friends because we would go to art museums all the time, and we got to see Billy Collins. I mean, this is, good Lord, I don't even know how long ago it was, in a historic theater in downtown Greensboro. And we were literally like, we were melting into our seats. We were falling on each other, just like I was crying through the whole thing. I was just like, this is so amazing. And I really had an image. I'm like, I want to like stand up and go, free bird, and rip my bra off and throw it on the stage. It was so good.
Oh man, that's amazing. Oh, what fun.
I didn't do that.
Oh, in my mind, Karen, you still did that, but I love the poem. Thank you for reading it.
Well,
I think that might be my favorite Karen poem ever.
Oh, had you not heard that, Christy?
I had not heard that one.
Yeah.
I heard that.
John, Kelly asked, what was the title of your poem? And she also loved the line, press against my lips and become tender.
Yeah,
Oh,
what a great last
what
line.
was
Yeah,
the
what's
title?
the title of your book? I'd love to buy
Learning
it.
to Love. The title was Learning to Love My New Body.
Awesome. All right.
I'm sorry I interrupted.
No, thank you.
Hey, and when I get money, Kelly, if you want, I can send you the book Karen was talking about.
Oh,
I have it too, and it is fabulous.
it'll rock your world. Yeah.
We could do a trade, John.
Oh my God, really? Oh, let me bow down. That's so awesome. Thank you.
It's Train Ride Elsewhere.
Oh, awesome.
Right?
Yeah, my mother.
that.
My mother's a photographer. She's not famous. She just does it because she enjoys it. And so the cover is one of her pictures, and it was like 0 degrees outside. And she literally laid on the ground and took a picture upward. And so the background's the sky, and it's this vine, and it's frozen, and icicles are off of it and everything. So I mean, it's beautiful, but I chose it because it looked alien-like, and the title Train Ride Elsewhere reminds me of like being somewhere else, and I was like, that looks like alien tentacles. So that's the reason why I chose it. But that's the backstory to the cover.
That's awesome. I love it.
No, I did not know that backstory, John. That's awesome. And yes, Kelly, I would love to do that.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Kelly.
Lori, did you want to read, or Christy?
I'm not going to read tonight, but I will eventually.
All right.
Yeah, I'm not feeling it. I don't know why.
Fine. There is no pressure. It's
you know
just
who never reads? You know who never reads during these? You, Malika.
Oh,
Malika.
yeah.
Oh yeah, we
Never,
can
ever
hear
read.
something. Either from Stumblefields
thought
or an
of
old
that.
one.
I always get tied up. I really like doing the hosting, and I feel like if I try to multitask, I will not do well. Book.
There's only 7 of us.
Yeah, now I'm going to read because it's us. You know what I'd actually like, well, it might be a bummer of a thing to end on. There's a poem that I'm working on, but let me do,
There are no bummers.
No.
Oh,
no. Well, there might be bummers, but you just put those down in the basement.
But they're important.
You know, I'm always amazed with people whose first drafts are anywhere decent, because mine are always like these really, you know, for lack of a better way to say it, really ugly babies. And I'm one of those people that has to edit for a considerable amount of time. That's just my process. So let's see if I can find what poem comes up on.
Yeah, I don't understand the people that can write a poem just like it just comes out. It's crazy.
That's only happened to me 3 times where it just came out.
I have pages and pages to edit into, and it ends up being a 4-line poem. I don't understand it. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I think it would be wonderful to be able to do that, but.
I keep coming back to, I'm trying to find this one poem in particular, but I can't find it. So we'll get whatever shows up. That's the only way I can think of doing it. So I'll just read the title poem, because whenever I type into my computer, it just keeps coming up. So we'll take that one. The Stumble Fields. Our feet in the dark still find the way to each other. Hold me and we unfold with creases smooth as wrist. The body's origami opening. The heart's insects whir, cicadas into the sun. Thoughts are not lanterns, though we follow them. The body demands only the world. The river rock unlocked, our hands wet.
Somebody it's not working.
Does anybody else want to read or have any questions?
No, but that was very beautiful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I loved it.
Yeah.
You, John.
Smooth as wrist, or something about the crease in the wrist. That was a great image.
Oh, you know, you had very tactile images, but also ones that took turns that I was just startled by. I love that.
There's a poet, if you're not familiar with her work, her name is Shira Ehrlichman, and she wrote Odes to Lithium. I'll try to get a link for you. Do you know this book?
Hey,
Somehow
I don't
that
mean
sounds
to be
familiar.
rude. Can I interrupt real fast? I have to go. I have another reading to go to, and I apologize, and I'm sorry.
Aloha. It's good to see you.
Good to see you, John.
Bye. And I will message you, Kelly. What do you? You're in California, so when it's 12 my time, do you go to bed at like 9 or 10 or?
Usually.
Okay. I don't want to message you and interrupt you, so I'll just message you tomorrow.
Okay, that sounds perfect. Right. Whatever. I'll just.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, John.
Sorry.
Bye, Jojo. No worries. Have a good night.
You too.
Squeeze the puppies and the kittens.
Yes.
I have never heard of Shira Ehrlichman. I'm writing it down.
He is amazing. So I worked with her as an editor. She has an online class that I took, and she has this saying that she calls peanut butter and fireworks. So whenever you think of imagery, you think of like peanut butter and jelly, right? And like one of our jobs as a poet, and I really believe that you come to art to be surprised, right? It's like something different than what you already know. So she talks about surprising imagery and creating peanut butter and fireworks in your own poems, which I just think is
love that. And I've never heard that term. Cool. I always enjoy people that do that, though, that have like an image that suddenly takes a turn that I'm like, wow, did not see that coming. It's wonderful how our teachers can help build a muscle or, you know, bring in another element that we might not have considered.
Right, exactly. Yeah, she's pretty fantastic. So learn a lot from her.
Well, you have just been amazing. And Kelly, I'm so really honored.
I've already ordered the book.
Oh, thank you. That's so sweet.
I'm just like, I have to have this. If I don't do it now, I might forget, and then I will really want to kill myself. So.
Oh, Laura, I so appreciate it.
Oh, it's so good. I'm really looking forward to this one.
Yeah, and Malika, I so appreciate the invitation. You know, like you said, having a book come out, a debut book during this time has been an interesting ride.
Yeah. Yes, it would. And so, you know, we're just very lucky that you came on here, and I thoroughly enjoy. I knew I would. I just didn't know how much.
Oh, thank you. Well, I feel super blessed and really grateful.
So Kelly,
well, I think this whole series is great because we get to see people from all over that we normally would. I go to book launches in Raleigh and now Richmond and other places like that, but where else are we going to get somebody from the West Coast? It's great.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Kelly, do you have any other readings scheduled? Are you doing any other Zoom book launch things? Or
I do. I'm trying to plan like a virtual tour. So I was going on tour in September, and I was going to Chicago and Philly and Minneapolis and a couple others. So I'm trying to pivot because I don't think we're going to be out of this in September, nor do I think that it's safe to even try. So I do, if you go on my website, which I'm going to put, it's just kellygracethomas.com. I will be making sure that the calendar is up to date within the next day or so.
Right.
So I have a couple scheduled in the future, but I'm hoping to schedule a lot more.
Great. Good.
Yeah.
So if y'all hear of other ones that she could do, pass it along to Kelly.
Yeah.
Great.
Hey, Kelly, if you friend me on Facebook, I'm a huge promoter of people's. It's like what I do. So
That's true.
If you're up for that, I'll send you.
Thank you. Absolutely. Is it just under Karen Stewart?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, great.
That's
Yeah, I would absolutely love to. And same, I mean, I'm a very, I'm not active on Facebook besides poetry. It's usually like poetry, here's my husband. Like, I'm not a big debater or anything like that. But yeah, I'm also under Kelly Grace Thomas Vojdani. So yeah, please also look for me. I'm looking for you right now, Karen.
Yeah, I'm on there.
Great, guys. Well, thank you so very much. It was good to see everybody.
This
well.
was nice.
I'll be in touch, and I'll send you the link for the YouTube, and also a way for us to exchange books.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. It's such
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. I'm going to go get my credit card now so I can order it. I'm jealous that Laura might get hers before I get mine.
Thank you. And Karen, I found you. I just found you. That's wonderful.
Oh, good. Yay.
Cool. You weren't coming up, so I was going to say, if you don't hear from me, reach out.
Oh, I'll stalk you till I find you.
Well, it was so lovely to meet you all, and I look forward to continuing all these conversations.
Oh, this was great. Thank you all so much.